Hello, my name is Carly Brenner, and today I'll be explaining 4 key terms related to MAP assessments: adaptive assessment, RIT or RIT score, zone of proximal development or ZPD, and normative data. These concepts are crucial for understanding how MAP growth assessments work and how they benefit students and educators. Our objective for our time today is to gain an understanding and capacity to talk about and use each of these 4 terms: adaptive assessment, RIT score, zone of proximal development, and normative data. By the end of today's session, you should be able to use these terms to discuss MAP assessments and data reports, making you more capable of supporting teachers or families in understanding these assessments, why they are valuable, and the implications they can have on instruction. Let's start with our first term, adaptive assessment. Adaptive assessment is a testing method that adjusts the difficulty of questions based on the student's responses. In short, this means that if a student answers a question correctly, the next question will be more challenging. If a student answers incorrectly, the next question will be easier. Because of this, no 2 students should receive the same test. For example, this chart outlines the flow of a MAP oral reading test, starting with a picture book for oral reading for all students. Depending on the student's performance, students progress to sentence reading fluency, followed by a grade level passage with a 6-item comprehension quiz. Based on their quiz performance, they either move to an above or below grade level passage and another comprehension quiz. Additionally, if certain thresholds are met or not met, they may also be assessed on phonological awareness, phonics, listening comprehension, and picture vocabulary. This flow ensures that students are assessed appropriately based on their reading and comprehension level and have a test that is customized perfectly to their needs. By understanding adaptive assessments, teachers can better tailor their instruction to meet each student's individual needs and determine what other assessments and data are needed to create a thorough and cohesive overarching assessment strategy. This ensures that all students are challenged appropriately and receive the support they need. Educational leaders can use the data from adaptive assessments to get an accurate measure of student ability, helping to identify both high achievers and those who may need intervention, as well as determine class, school, and district level priorities. On the other hand, one should be mindful of the potential for limitations. These assessments require advanced technology, complex design, and interpretation. Items and standards level data are difficult to analyze across groups of students, and scoring is normed, so a score on an adaptive assessment can tell you on average what each student's strengths and areas for growth are, but not specifically. Adaptive assessments should not be used as the sole measure for high-stakes decisions, such as grade promotion, and they should not be used to make granular instructional decisions. Let's move on to RIT score. RIT stands for RASH unit, a measurement scale used to report student performance on MAP growth assessments. There are several RIT scales, one each for reading, language usage, mathematics, and general science, plus a few scales that are under development. The RIT score measures a student's academic knowledge, skills, and abilities and is used to track growth over time. When a student finishes their MAP test, they receive a RIT score for each area they are tested in: reading, language usage, math, or science. This score represents a student's achievement level at any given moment and helps measure their academic growth over time. The RIT scale is a stable scale, like feet and inches, that accurately measures student performance regardless of age, grades, or grade level. Like marking height on a growth chart and being able to see how tall your child is at various points in time, you can also see how much they have grown between tests. Understanding RIT scores allows teachers and leaders to track student progress over time, providing insight into how well students are learning and growing. Teachers can set realistic and measurable goals for students based on their RIT scores, helping to motivate students and guide instructional planning. An educator may review RIT scores to identify students who are not making expected progress toward goals and implement targeted intervention strategies. However, it is important to provide necessary support for educators and parents with understanding what the scores mean and do not mean. An RIT score should not be used in isolation for high stakes decisions such as grade promotion. Number 3, zone of proximal development. The zone of proximal development, or ZPD, was developed by Igor Vygotsky. It refers to the range of tasks that a student can perform with guidance but not yet independently. Understanding a student's zone of proximal development helps teachers provide appropriate support and challenges. The zone of proximal development helps identify the optimal challenge level and supports targeted strategies. It helps to guide differentiated instruction and enhances student engagement. It does require additional skill identification, and it tends to be oversimplified. It should not be rigidly applied without context. One of my favorite quotes is by esteemed scientist Daniel Willingham, who says, "Curiosity prompts people to explore new ideas and problems, but when we do, we quickly evaluate how much mental work it will take to solve the problem. If it's too much or too little, we stop working on the problem if we can." By understanding the ZPD, teachers can provide appropriate levels of challenge to students, ensuring that they are neither bored nor overwhelmed. Educational leaders can train teachers to identify and use ZPD in their instruction, fostering a supportive learning environment that promotes growth. For example, a teacher who uses ZPD to differentiate instruction in a mixed ability classroom may provide scaffolds for students who need them while offering more complex tasks to advanced students. This can be done by customizing checks for understanding for each student based on their ZPD. Normative data. Normative data is used to compare a student's performance against a larger representative group of students. This comparison helps educators understand where a student stands in relation to their peers. Note that in this example, the dotted line indicates the national average achievement, and the solid line represents a student who is scoring well above the national norm. The norm varies based on the group, whether it's the class, the school, or national average, and the subject. The norms in the table above have a very straightforward interpretation. For example, in the achievement norms for reading, grade 2, students in the fall had a mean score of 172.35 with a standard deviation of 15.19. To get a sense of how much variation there was, the standard deviation can be subtracted from the mean and added to the mean to produce a range of about 157 to 188. Since the norms are based on the bell curve, we know that 68% of all grade 2 reading scores are expected to fall within this range. The growth norm table shows mean growth when the mean grade level achievement score, or the 50th percentile score, in our case 172.35, is used as a starting score. In each case, the starting score is treated as a factor when predicting growth. If a particular student's starting score was below the grade level mean, the growth mean is generally higher. Similarly, students with starting scores above the grade level mean would generally show less raw growth on average. In this table, we can determine the expected average growth of a second grade student who started in the 50th percentile in the fall on the assessment. Normative data provides performance context and helps identify trends. It can be used to set goals and inform instructional strategies. On the other hand, it can create pressure to conform and may not reflect unique context, such as the testing conditions on the day of assessment. It is, after all, just a snapshot of what the student can do in a given moment of time. It should not label or limit potential based on comparisons alone, and it's not useful to make student level assumptions on specific skills without further diagnostics. Comprehension of these terms help leaders and teachers to customize students' learning, measure and track progress over time, and implement best practices when it comes to data analysis, teaching and learning, and making informed decisions around priorities at the student, class, school, and district level. This ensures that students receive the right level of challenge and support, ultimately maximizing their learning potential and success. Thank you for joining me today. If you have any further questions, please feel free to email me at cbrennerconsulting@gmail.com.